Hello everyone, welcome to the Recruiters Hangout. Today we are discussing disruption and death recruitment technology in 2015. So predictions about technology in the corporate and agency sector, where's it going, what's new, and the hashtag as always is Rechangout. Please ask questions, comments, give feedback on Twitter and on Google Plus, where you can use the Q&A app as well. I'll be keeping a lookout for them. The Rec Hangouts supported by Colleague Software, by the Technology Alliance. We've got Mark Stevens here with us today, founder of the F10 Group, by Alan Whitford, who is our excellent host from Abtech Partnership, and we're joined today by Shane McCusker from Intelligent Software. Shane does a lot of good blogging, a lot of good sourcing tools and tips and advice, so do find his website online, we know one another from True London, Shane, and Shane has a lot of very useful, informative things to say about technology. So I'll hand it over to Alan, who will kick us off. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks. Sorry for us being a couple minutes late. That was down to me not having everything connected on time. Shane, great to see you again. Intelligent Software, that's intelligent spelled with the number 1, for those of you that are trying to do a Google search to find it. And there's a really neat URL. It's intel-sw.com. Will that be about right, Shane?
That's us, Alan. Thanks for that.
Almost like I've been able to find you before. Shane, so we're talking about not death and taxes, which we know are sure things, but it almost feels like death and technology and predictions of technology are also sure things. And we're getting out. You're getting in early with your 2015 predictions. You're going to start. You're going to do the David Letterman and do the top 10 things that are my predictions for 2015, or we're going to be a little more structured than that.
I could give you at least the top 2. I suppose I've been thinking about it in 2 ways. One, looking at the changes in technology and what implications they have in the recruitment space, and then also looking what changes happen in the recruitment space and see what impact that has on technology. I did to line up with your title of the webinar, I did some work earlier on the year with Greg Savage and produced some videos with him. And slightly dramatic title, Recruiters Will Die, was the title of some of our videos. And really it was about saying that the recruitment industry, the proposition is changing. Recruiters need to change. They need to adapt. Otherwise, the industry will go the way of the travel industry agencies or retailers or books or all the other industries that you've seen being dramatically impacted on by the changing face of technology.
Well, but doesn't this kind of feel like we've had this conversation before, like every year for the last 15 years? I'm looking at a list that Mark has gathered together from predictions from last year. Of about 10 new predictions that people made last year. I'm looking at this and going, let me see, creating and protecting an employment brand, more grassroots recruitment activity, simplifying technology, more value from agencies, mobile, HR being measured against ROI. I'm not seeing anything on this list that says, wow, that's earth-shattering. I can't wait for 2015 to get here. So have you got something that's going to be earth-shattering for me, Shane?
Well, I do earth-shattering in small steps, Alan. I think the future of the industry, it's going to be a reflection of changes that have happened in the past. Just before we started broadcasting, Mark and I were talking about last year's predictions. And to some extent, you could dust those off and use them as next year's predictions if you wanted to. Some of them maybe have dwindled, and some of them have exceeded our expectations. The sort of technology buzzwords going forward are definitely going to be mobile and big data. But what those actually mean on a day-to-day basis is much more interesting and complicated.
So what do they mean?
Good question, Mark. Well done. Well, we look at those 2 to begin with. The big data aspect of it is, first of all, I think there's a bit of confusion because a lot of people think a lot of data and big data are sort of the same things. I suppose a simple analysis would be If you're talking to a candidate and they tell you what their salary is, you know what their salary is. But if you know every candidate, know everybody's salary, then you know what the average salary is. And being able to extract value from a large amount of information is the value of big data. So as Louis will talk about, I'm sure, it's not about just having data, it's about doing something useful with it, it's about extracting value with it, and converting data into intelligence, I suppose, is what we're aiming at there.
Has anybody done this yet, actually, Shane? I mean, this is quite an interesting idea, is that if I'm going to advertise a job, if I'm a recruiter or an end client, wouldn't it be good to be able to put in the details around that job and pull in data from the last sort of 3 or 4 years to see who else has been recruiting for those jobs in my geographic area, what salaries were they putting out for that, so that I can make sure that I'm going to advertise my job at rates that are going to be competitive in the market. Is anybody doing that?
I don't know if they're doing exactly that, but there's lots of work in that field. I was at the Sourcing Europe Summit last month, and Martin Lee, who I'm sure you all know, was talking about talent mapping. And it was a fascinating talk that he gave there, really to differentiate between the role of a recruiter who goes off looking for one person and the role of a talent mapper who goes to find everybody in an industry. Sorry, the sun's just come into me, so I've gone horribly white on the camera. Hopefully a cloud will reappear.
It's a holy moment.
I suppose, what the sourcing community is doing is about extracting value from large amounts of data. If you go onto Google and do a Google search, you're extracting value from large amounts of data. And maybe take it on and what you do from it therein afterwards. So yeah, I mean, it's small steps for radical change is what I think we're going to see.
But Shane, if we look at this whole technology thing in Google, okay, so whatever the number is, Google only actually checks out what 4% or 5% of the potential billions and billions of pages are out there, whoever number we use this week. But we still think of Google as the technology for search and for sourcing. And I guess the question for me is, so when we talk technology, do we mean this lovely piece of kit, the new iPhone 6, or do we mean the software that you and others like yourself sell and the colleagues sells for the agencies, which is how to manage all that information and data and turn it from being just bits and bytes into something usable, or is it the internet itself? Because that seems to now become the only place to search and source, and we don't seem to look at the way of computer uses your book or software uses your book or other directories unless they're online. Is that limiting us, or is that really just that is the future?
So I'm not too sure if I got your point exactly, but maybe if I could just say that it sounds as though you have to differentiate between the technology and what it is you do with the technology. Everybody has Google. Everybody can use Google search, but all of us know that there are some people in the sourcing community who can do things with Google search that would make your hair spin, or head spin. Maybe so. Some of the stuff that I'm working on, which is a continuation of what we've done in the past, is about looking at searching techniques and technology, wrapping technology around the techniques so you're getting better value out of the search. I was working on a project earlier on the year, which is a free product on our website, Intelligence Alerts, and it was about trying to identify people who have just changed job. And so, there's no way of searching LinkedIn to find people that have just changed job, but with sourcing techniques and the automation of sourcing techniques, it's possible to do that. So it's about trying to apply a layer of intelligence on top of the search capability that's available to people.
That's interesting, Shane. I'm sure I'm using one of your tools that you designed that tells me when people have indicated they've changed jobs on LinkedIn, actually.
That's the one. That's the one.
And there's another tool on Indeed as well that you can use to do the same thing.
Yeah, there've been a few products that have been out and about, and I mean, maybe I hate plugging competitors, but since colleagues here, and I may as well plug a few others. Bullhorn Reach was maybe one of the first ones to start. Not Reach, Radar was one of the first ones to interpret information and monitor sites for changing candidate statuses and then interpreting something by that. It had a bit of a problem because of the fact that it was dependent on you having a LinkedIn network, whereas whenever you open up Google's APIs or LinkedIn's APIs, you can achieve much bigger quantities of data and so much better results from that. So, but everybody's working in this. This is another one of the changes that I am suggesting has been happening and will continue to happen, is that there's going to be much more development of small products rather than big products. In the past, colleague, myself, all the other ATS, CRM vendors developed big products that took us a long time to do it, whereas now we're seeing the freemium premium model, meaning that people have to develop tiny little products that do little things that they give away for free with the hope of connecting it together to monetize it some way in the future. This is going to have a big impact and effectively a deregulation of the technology development space. Don't know if it's going to be good or bad. It's going to generate a lot of free tools and it's going to create a lot of confusion. Who knows what will happen next?
I think that's one of the key points for the future of technology, is that you're going to see the CRM or database will essentially become a hub in the middle of many interconnected tools from a vast market of options. And you can see, I mean, again, like you can have a look at Bullhorn, they're growing their marketplace. You can look at all our competitors, they have a few partners, but that will grow and grow. And we'll start to see, I hope, more tools outside the recruitment sphere, not just the broad beans, not just the Burning Glass and the Dastras, but outside. I mean, we're looking at MailChimp, and I'm sure people are looking at the other e-newsletter marketing tools. And plugging all these tools into one location where we can then make sense of the data rather than just chucking the data in, as Shane was talking earlier. But I mean, back to that point at the beginning, on using data, I think we can overcomplicate things, and Shane's been saying this for years, data retrieval. Recruitment agencies have thousands of CVs in their database. They can assess these CVs, analyze these CVs, and come up with very good market reports, talent mapping reports, intelligence they can offer their clients before they even get into the sort of the big data of the internet. But I suppose the next stage, and whether this will be coming along next year, is connecting all your structured data in somehow automatically connecting it to the online data. And for instance, if you look at tools like Social 360, which is a little tool in Chrome, it takes the email or it takes the profile you're on or the email that you're looking at, and it'll find associated social accounts. So something I feel that should happen is that you're looking at your profiles in your database, and it's automatically finding the other online profiles of that individual. But yes, I think I'd like to see that happen in the next 2 years, but it obviously depends on from the recruitment agency side, what agencies want to see themselves. And that comes back to the argument of who's leading the way. But the guy we work with, Bill Borman, always says, if you ask your client what you want to see, they'll just want to see a faster car. So it could be down to technologists to try and be braver and look at other sections of the industry and the corporate side and outside what marketing people are doing, which I'm a bit biased, but have a look at what marketeers are doing and digital marketing agencies are doing. Anyway, that's my piece. I'll go back to watching Twitter.
I think you've hit upon a lot of valid points there, Louis. From my point of view, I always viewed what I do as about information management. And a number of years ago, I stopped worrying whether it was internal information or external information. And the job that I set myself was really to try and get value from it. And I don't care where it is. It doesn't matter. And it could be anywhere, and it creates technical challenges to do that, but that's not really a recruiter's problem. A recruiter just wants to be able to access it. Now, when I say they want to be able to access it, I'm going to caveat that. I was at a conference recently, and I happened to be on the panel because my name was pulled out of the hat, and one of the questions from the floor was, is technology going to make recruiters lazy? And I was delighted that somebody who was a recruiter could possibly think that it could make somebody lazy. I think technology is making the recruitment industry harder. I think it's harder now to be a recruiter and to find people than it was at any time in the past, because of the quantity of information that is available and the challenge there is of finding the right person for the job. I'm sure that lots of other, Alan's going to jump in on that one.
Well, I will and I won't. Let's put it two ways, I guess. One is the quality of the recruiter is going to get through the data. The good recruiters are going to find the right people, and they're going to do the best job for their customers, because that's what good recruiters do. What's the difference between, back when you and I were in short pants and we were searching for data, and we poured through directories and we called companies up to the switchboard, and we pretended we were from Datamation magazine so we could identify the head of IT. And now we just go on the web and we find all that information. So we had to be detectives with worse tools, if you will. And yet, at a conference I ran, 2 weeks ago, where we had both Johnny, your fellow guy from across that water, John, and he's been on our show a number of times. And we had Martin, both giving some different perspectives. Martin was actually going old school, i.e. he was going back to, you really do need to know how to do Boolean search. You don't need just those cool tools that Johnny and Shane deliver you to make it easy, because they do a job, but you really need to, if you're a good researcher, you need Boolean, and here's what you can do with it. You're going to just, we had an audience of 220 recruiters. One, they had no idea what Johnny was talking about, and they had no idea what Martin was talking about for the most part. Just alien concept to them, because they're still thinking that searching is looking on LinkedIn. They're still thinking searching, if they're pretty innovative, might be looking on job boards. So I think we have a challenge that we have a lot of people that are supposedly recruitments or resourcers don't actually remember how to do research of any type, much less with all these neat, cool tools that you guys are bringing out.
I mean, without wanting to alienate my entire customer base, I think you've got to differentiate between Martin, Lee, and the rest of the industry. Martin is way up there in his technical capabilities, and the recruitment industry and recruiters in general aren't technology people. I don't think they should be technology people. They're people. They're salespeople. They are people there to engage and have interpersonal skills. The role of technology is to facilitate a smarter way of working, so that they can do some of what Martin Lee can do, but they don't have to do it all. But they have to get to a professional standard. So yes, absolutely, I think that the recruiters everywhere have to be technology aware, much more so than they were in the past. But the problem of recruiting is still the same. The problem of finding somebody that is a right fit for a job, and the matching process, the convincing process, the craft of recruitment is still the same. But the tools have changed, and maybe some of the proposition, particularly from agency recruiters, is changing in terms of what service they actually provide. That's my thought on it.
What do you think, Shane, about, recruiters do seem to be obsessed with, where technology can help them at the front end of the process, the sourcing aspect. But, I was thinking last year that the game changer in recruitment agency in particular was going to be that they were going to have to add more value further down the life cycle, using technology to assist the end client to interrogate the candidate more, to validate the candidate more, to provide, a service that took away the administration from them and provide, a more advanced service than what they'd done previously, which was just sending a selection of CVs and cover sheets, using video technology, using assessment tools. getting involved in some of the aspects that HR perhaps did?
I'm going to be particularly opinionated in this one because I know that. Look, I aspire to develop technology that invents and facilitates better ways of recruiting. So that's what I'm aiming at. Look, if the best recruiters in the world are just so much better than average, you've got to turn around and say they do something different. And we all know them. Most agencies and corporates will have somebody who just places twice as many people as everybody else around them, and they do something different. So, the role of technology is to facilitate everybody to work the way the super recruiters work. If all you're interested in technology is to reduce administrative tasks, all you're doing is giving the average recruiter more time average. So, that's the sort of area that I think, there are real opportunities to enable people to work in ways that just work better.
Well, let's go back to what one of our viewers, Toby, has said that he thinks, sorry, Mark, that the biggest technology leap then is going back to what you started with at the beginning, Shane, is that people started using their existing systems already and the data they've already got more efficiently. And maybe to Louis' point as well, starting to tie that up with some of the external data that's freely available. That, from a technology perspective for a recruiter, one, shouldn't be a giant leap of faith in terms of having to learn how to do it, but also would be a more efficient use of their time and perhaps have them become better recruiters.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe it also asks the question as to who's driving this. Is the improvement in recruiting the responsibility of the technologist or the responsibility of the recruiter, or maybe it's both?
Well, I think it's a challenge that most recruiters think they're technologists because they are running around with one of these or something similar. They buy on Amazon, they go home and they're gamers at night. They've got all their various bits and pieces draping off them as they get on the tube of all the kit that they've got, so they think they're technologists. Where you might think there's something slightly different about it.
I don't see. Sorry, Alan. You were taking a breath there. I nearly jumped in. I don't see super recruiters, and by super recruiters, we probably mean those that sort of bill the most. Yeah, do we? Those that are most exceptional at what they do. Okay, so I don't see any correlation between super users and the way that they use technology. The two trends that I see with super users is that they're very good at winning exclusive business, so they get paid for the work that they do, or they are very good at understanding their marketplace so they can represent candidates across multiple clients, therefore making more placements with the candidates they're working with. Now, the technology is there, and I agree with Shane that technology is there to facilitate, but there are very few recruiters out there that are exceptional at doing that. Even when they're shown what to do, in my experience, they find it very difficult to cope with anything other than campaign at a time. They almost work in silos. But the best recruiters are always able to see outside the they'll spot something in a CV that says there's another opportunity. Whether they're having a conversation, something will come up, they'll read something in an article and say, there's somebody going to be recruiting over there, something that I can do business with.
Can technology not ultimately see what these people are doing and replicate it to help the less super recruiter?
Yes, I think they can. I mean, Shane, this is where I'd be interested to hear your opinion. When we're talking about facilitating part of the process to assist the client, if you can put together the strategy to assist the client to do that work, then you have a better chance of going and securing that business exclusively or on a retained basis, which is ultimately going to help you to make more money. Is that not the case?
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. When I'm putting this proposition that there are ways of improving the way you do recruitment, there are thousands, if not millions, of small steps that you take, and technology can wrap around each one of those. It's not for me as a technologist to suggest what those steps are, but you just identified them. You just said, well, the super recruiter is better able to understand and relate the information that they're getting when they pick up the phone and talk to somebody. they get more information on the telephone. That's not the responsibility of the telephone manufacturer. It's the skill and the craft that the recruiter uses the technology for. But if the phone was in some way able to analyze what they're saying, to indicate that the phone conversation is more positive or more negative, would that help them? Maybe that's real space age sort of stuff. But say, for example, it was something much simpler. Say, for example, whenever a candidate appears on your computer screen, if your software can tell you insightful information about that person you otherwise wouldn't know, if they can help you spot opportunities to engage that person in a more professional conversation, then surely that's going to help. Surely that's going to up everybody's game. You can also put feedback loops in there. So maybe as a manager, you're then comparing what the action is against the prompts that are being fed to the recruiter. You know, a candidate gives you the names of 3 companies they've also applied to. Did that recruiter go and follow up with those companies to see if there's skill sets in those companies that they can hire from?
Yeah. It can create leads automatically and then prompt the correct recruiters to follow up.
Exactly.
Well, we've got an interesting question from Kim Goddard, and we'll do a bit of a reset before we go to Kim's question. You're listening and viewing, hopefully, the Rec Hangout, hashtag Rec Hangout. We're talking about technology, predictions, death of technology or death of recruiters. I'm not sure which because of technology. We've got Shane McCusker from Intelligence, who is a self-avowed technologist, although I think he's actually a great recruiter hiding under that banner. Louis Welcomme from colleague, Mark Stevens from F10 Group, and our fourth colleague, Louise, is probably not watching us as she sits on a beach somewhere. She swears that she will do her weekly wrap-up, and that she will watch the video later to do that wrap-up for us. Shane, so Kim Goddard wants to know, as these tools develop and it becomes easier for recruiters to basically search at large outside of just job board databases or LinkedIn, and search, the wider World Wide Web to find people, what's that going to do to approaches and response rates? And I think by this you mean if it's easier for me to find people, it's easier for you and Mark and Louis, we can all find somebody now. That means I'm potentially getting more approaches from all these crazy recruiters that have found me somewhere. Is that, does that mean that my response rate is going to drop, and that makes the recruiter's job even tougher then?
Yes, this is why my proposition is that technology is making recruitment more difficult. Because in the past, you've now got so many more people that you have to contact, and the resistance to recruiters. I mean, could I make another wild and scary prediction that the recruitment industry has had a little bit of a credibility problem, and I'm seeing things like the privacy arguments that are appearing now, Edward Snowden, the European ruling about the right to be forgotten. This is raising the specter of Big Brother in the Orwellian sense. At the same time that the internet sourcers, which a few years ago were really niche, Louis mentioned the True London. At the second True London, I met my first sourcer. I met 2 of them. Catherine Robinson at that stage was the only person in the UK professionally calling herself a sourcer. Now it's become mainstream and everybody's a sourcer. So how do you equate the fear of being watched with the recruiters who always had a little bit of a the term headhunter was on a par with a estate agent and solicitor in terms of professional credibility, perhaps. It wasn't where the industry really should be.
Well, and it's interesting you mentioned Catherine, by the way. It's a good plug-in. She's going to join us in December. And you're right, Catherine, she won the first or the second SourceCon. I can't remember which, which was a shock to all those folks in the U.S. that thought they were the preeminent sourcers in the universe. People like Shelley Stuckel and others, and here came our Catherine, and put them all to shame. But I find it's interesting that we've always had in the agency model, you've had a team of 7 with a team leader and 4 recruiters or 5 recruiters, and then 1 or 2 resourcers or researchers, or doing the other grunt work. In the corporate model, we haven't really done that very well. We still are having HR people being recruiters. We still struggle here in Europe to have proper recruitment teams. Yeah, there's exceptions, obviously, when you have like Matt Jeffrey, who's been doing it for years, or a lot of the other people that have been doing this stuff. Yet I'm sitting in a company now where we're putting a new recruitment system in, it's a real recruitment system, and I can't figure out who I'm going to train because there's no recruiters. They're HR people. And so they're afraid of the technology. Yes, they use spreadsheets, and yes, they use Outlook and email, but they look at this and they go, oh my God, this is a recruitment system. What do I do? Well, it's about the same as using Amazon, quite honestly. It's no more difficult than that, but it feels different. It's a CRM, it's a thing. So maybe what we need to be looking at is what Louis alluded to and you've alluded to is the smaller, simpler app approach that doesn't feel like a recruitment system. It just feels like what I do every day on my phone or my tablet or whatever I'm on.
It's not easy. It's much easier to develop something complicated than something simple, Alan.
I know, but I'm waiting for you to give me that really simple one, Shane. I know you can.
Well, I've said this publicly before. My favorite application on the internet is Google because everybody thinks they can use Google. You don't need a technical support line for people ringing up saying I've done a search and it hasn't worked. So if you can develop applications that are so simple that people don't realize the cleverness behind them, then you're onto something good.
Well, that's what Bill keeps telling us. Make your search like Google. Make your search like Google. Yeah, we'll tell the developers that.
It's easier said than done, Louis, as I'm sure you know.
But the sentiment, the principle is correct. I think it's Google. Just type in your question, get your answer.
Yeah. We're still some way away from that. I mean, I don't think that what colleague in intelligence software do is develop software that is serving a specific need and a specific demand. And whilst that demand, is there, we'll do the best we can to comfort the recruiter from the difficulties of it. But as the point that's been raised is that technology is making recruitment more difficult. What recruiters are actually doing, moving from being response handlers to being direct hiring sourcers and headhunters, and the fragmentation of the recruitment market it's a very disruptive place at this moment in time.
So why don't we look at it from the candidate's perspective for a moment then? Because I've got people on LinkedIn, I got people finding me on, hey, I saw you spoke at a conference, so they're finding me from all these places. But ultimately, when I get into the recruiting process, or the recruiting experience, as I would prefer to call it, what are these tools changing that allows me to be a more engaged candidate? We've got video interviewing, different assessment tools. It's not just taking an SHL test now, and there are other psychometric vendors available. It's using other technologies. So the video in itself for both screening, but also now as these things get bigger and more efficient, video on my mobile device. So do we have this coming together of the two technologies that we've talked about for years could change recruitment, mobile and video?
It already is.
You think?
I would say from the campaigns that we're running through our platform that the fastest growth area at the moment in terms of people adopting new technology is video to use to build up profiles of applicants or to do a short type of interview using a few questions to get that sort of visual representation of the candidate to complement their skills and experience in the CV. And the video technology that's out there, the leading providers, you can do that on a mobile device. And I've been looking at some of the video profiles that have been generated recently on our system, and probably about 15 to 20% of them have been done on actually a mobile device. So the individuals haven't actually gone back to their PC to do it. They've sat in the car and done it, or sat in a park and responded to the questions. So there's a perfect example of the two technologies coming together.
Well, I think a little challenge, Shane. Where does that video go in my ATS, though?
Good question, Alan. I mean, there's a couple of issues here, and probably the technologists have to hold their hands up a little bit in that the whole area of mobile and video are new and developing. we were talking just before we went on air about, you know, what a mobile site is. If you ask a web developer, they'll talk about a responsive site, which is really a website that changes size depending on the device you're viewing it. But and I know lots of recruitment companies that have got lovely responsive sites. They're not expensive. You can do them on WordPress yourself. But then when you look at it and you say, well, try and apply for a job through a mobile phone, and on the site it says attach your CV, and you don't have a CV on your mobile phone, and they exit out. And somebody exiting out from a website because they can't apply looks very similar to somebody who exits because they don't want to apply or they're not suitable. So it's really difficult to monitor that. With regards to the video stuff, again, watch this space. I'm always quite excited about video. There's again a discrepancy between the technical capability and what people do in practice. I do a lot of work in the agency space. Agency recruiters don't like video because candidates don't look good on their homemade videos. And it's another thing for the recruiter's client to object to. They don't look good on video, we're not going to hire them, you know? But what I do like about it is the application of technology to an area of recruitment that is still really ineffective, which is the selection process of candidates. And maybe the selection process is the thing that requires more attention than the sourcing process, which, to be honest, we're at a stage now we can pretty well find everybody without too much difficulty, but trying to find the right person is becoming more and more of the challenge.
Well, if 80%...
Go ahead, Mark.
If 80% of people hired that leave a job within 12 months leave for behavioural reasons, not because they couldn't do the job technically, then that is an area where both clients and recruiters need to place more emphasis, and that technology can assist. And I think the combination of video and behavioural assessments and making those tools more accessible and integrated into the platforms that we're using is going to be a massive game changer in terms of recruitment accuracy. I mean, I saw an article the other day that said that the UK wastes somewhere in the region of £15 billion a year on bad hires. That's people that leave within 12 months of being recruited. Now, I don't know how accurate that figure is, but it's an interesting concept that the economy wastes so much money by recruiting the wrong people into the wrong jobs.
It's interesting. I've heard as well that most of that's due to bad culture fit. But whether we can bring in cultural fit tools and psychometrics into recruitment CRMs, I don't know, Shane, you've been considering that at all, but or whether there's any demand. I mean, I'd love to see culture fit tools and so forth as part of a selection process within recruitment.
There are ways of doing that. I think, Belinda is asking us to actually sort of touch on that in terms of her question for us, which is about wondering how many recruiters change how and what they look for now. Do they take into account changing worker sentiment? There are roles now in countries where the worker doesn't want a career. They just want a job. They need a job for the next 12 months, and then that's it. And you need to factor that into what you're hiring for. If you look at the stuff that, say, David Barrett with Qt has been doing, with a lot of their customers, it is very much about actually delivering. Sorry about that.
Is that a landline, Alan?
Yeah, it sounded like a phone. Landline. Hey, and that's what you're supposed to use those things for, is actually talk to people. But it is.
I thought they were meant to be dead by this year, according to some predictions.
Yeah. But how do we look at a company, and the company has to do the work beforehand on its values. We're not allowed necessarily to use the word culture fit because that could imply we could have a restrictive hiring policy. But you have company values, core competencies that you should be hiring to fit to. But unless your interviewers have been trained in structured interviewing to use the right assessment tools themselves, you know what? Most recruiters are still hiring by their gut. And that's why, Mark, we end up with a third of hires being crap, that's the technical term for it, a third of hires being okay, and a third of hires working out. And that number's been there. I've been in recruitment for over 30 years, and that number basically never changes because we're not hiring to fit all of the elements of a company and the job. You look at Lou Adler's stuff. He says, don't use a job spec. hire to what the work is. Now that's a cultural change we need to have embedded both in companies, and agencies absolutely are not going to invest the time to do that because they're just trying to fill a job as fast as possible, and they got a list of skill sets that they're supposed to hire to. So I think we have some disconnects that recruitment technology could help. It helps us better match the technical pieces, but is the technology actually going to help us map against the culture? Only it will, only if the company itself has done the pre-game work to understand what its culture is, what its competencies are, what its frameworks are, that it's trying to map people to.
Isn't this to do with the sort of deaf element of the title, Alan, as well, in that recruiters need to change and start looking at things like cultural fit or whatever other words are appropriate, and so forth, to offer more value to their clients, to not just offer, to get away from just a transactional service. And when when that changes, then perhaps we'll be seeing more of these tools coming into the CRMs and other technology providers.
This change will come, but it will be driven by the end client. And one of the predictions from last year that we put up at the start was that HR are going to become more accountable and be measured against return on investment. And I guess the biggest measure that HR can be measured against in regards to recruitment is the effectiveness of the people that have been recruited and the retention of those people. Two key metrics. And if business owners start to place more emphasis on that, so that the HR, the people responsible for bringing people into the organisation, insist upon the right assessments taking place, and cultural assessment is really to look at sort of where the potential conflicts exist within an individual, so they can identify whether or not somebody's going to be aligned with the culture of that organisation and fit in, not just about whether or not they can actually physically do the job.
There's also, Mark, if I can jump in there are some potential indicators that the mechanism to achieve a cultural fit will be about reinventing the recruitment processes. I mean, I'm thinking particularly about some of the referral recruitment schemes that have had mixed success in the past, or even some of the crowdsourcing approaches to recruitment, whereby the recruitment process is developing in new ways, facilitated by intelligence and ways that are there to address these associated with trying to get a better person to fill a particular role.
Yeah, I mean, I've got mixed feelings about referral schemes. I went to see a client that I did all the recruitment for many years ago, and filled about 14, 15 jobs on the bounce. Went in to see the MD, and he was smirking away, saying he just recruited somebody for a job that had come as a referral for somebody that worked for him. And I said to him, well, I didn't even know you were recruiting for that position. He said, well, we weren't, but the opportunity came to hire this guy. And so I said to him, well, what role have you given him, and what's the objective for this individual within the business? And through the course of conversation, I then dropped in and said, well, if you'd actually put that together as a job description and you'd let me go away and source the best people in the industry that were out there for that job, would you have still hired this guy? And he said, probably not. And that is a recruitment strategy that is driven by cost over and above, an intelligent strategy to bring in the best resources and the best cultural fit, I personally believe.
But I think, Mark, that's an example of not using a referral scheme, actually having it structured and managed. That's and that's very much in many ways an agent way of hiring, in terms of you hire the people you know, the people the family knows. There's a whole referral thing like that in the Middle East and Asia, which is not about necessarily hiring the best for the job, but it's about there's a cultural and business impact. If you're putting together a proper recruitment referral scheme, it sits along with all of your sourcing channels, and it's based on having the proper job specs, the proper assessments, and anybody that comes through a referral scheme should be mapped against and measured against candidates from other channels. Kim's got a question for you, Shane, as a technologist. I think she wants you to develop this tool for us. She wants a recruitment tool that can go into, for example, a Java developer's Git account, assess the quality of his or her code, rank it against other technologists in the area and their code, and then pick the top 10 profiles and just shove them across to the recruiter. AI recruitment, she's going to call it. I think there's something for you to build there, Shane.
Yeah, well, sounds a challenge. I suppose it again is maybe we'll put this down as a prediction going forward, that the sort of stuff that we're working on now of trying to acquire value from information. You hit the low-hanging fruit first of all. You look at Google, you look at Twitter, you look at these big information sources, but the more niche the information you get, the more potential value you can derive from it. So if you're going to look at GitHub and analyze GitHub, there's something in the back of my head that says somebody's already done that, though. I don't know if that's going to materialize as to who it is and what they did at this moment in time, but it might appear in the back of my head somewhere along the line, unless you know better, Alan.
I'm just looking forward to you building it, Shane. Because I know you can.
I would need to build it, find somebody that could write it. It would be an iterative look to get somebody from GitHub who could write this sort of thing.
Well, if you had Kim's tool, and by the way, Kim, I do apologize for calling you a girl. I've been informed that you're not, and I do apologize for that. Well, Shane, let's talk about this. We're not going to build this tool. That's a shame, because I think it would work, and Kim's ready to sell it for you for sure. What do you think? Let's go back to the top of the show. You said you had a couple predictions that you might actually bring out. So what do you really predict that the technology is, what's going to be the impactful technology in 2015?
Oh, you've put me on the spot there, Alan. The impact of technology, I mean, that's going to be a difficult one. I mean, whenever we look at from a technology point of view and say what's changing, yeah, absolutely, we're going to get better at doing what we're doing already. We're going to be able to get more value and be able to source better quality information and deliver it faster in bigger quantities. Now, the impact that has on the recruitment industry, I'm hopeful that the recruitment industry will reinvent itself, be more focused in terms of the service that it's providing, and invent better ways of doing recruitment. I think that's going to happen in lots of small steps rather than anything big and significant. So we're going to see improvement in every area, I hope.
That was a nice waffle. Shane, really nicely done. Not answered the question at all. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome, Alan. I also said silver suits and hoverboards, but I predicted that before and it never came true.
Yeah. Well, I look at predictions, and I think if you go back to the early days when Tim and Alistair at Enhance had started their Future Recruitment Conference series, and I remember building a slide where I showed a guy in a Corvette Stingray bailing across to the middle of America with a heads-up display on his window, and in what I said, and the heads-up displays had just come to cars that year. And I said, okay, well, let's put this in recruitment perspective. He can be bailing down the highway, heads-up display, his phone will ring, and he'll answer it, without touching anything. And he'll say, Shane, we got a job for you. It's in Las Vegas. And he'll go, car, take me to the location. The car will turn around, GPS, go to the job interview, and he'll take you right there. And this was me just making this up on the fly. Well, of course, in today's technology, we could do all of that, for sure. All of that is totally possible to do. So what that says to me is that, got out of the crystal ball game. Because for sure, whatever we think is totally absurd, somebody's going to build. Whatever we think is impossible, somebody will build. And Martin has always made the point that whatever technology is out there, a recruiter is going to figure out how to use it for recruitment some way. Because recruiters that like technology will always try and find a way to use something for the purpose for which it was never intended. To me, that's one of the ongoing trends, is what's the next bit of kit that comes out that I can figure out how to recruit people for, Pinterest. That wasn't about recruitment, but there's a lot of personal data there. So, what's the technology piece that Louis is going to develop for us that has nothing to do with recruitment that's going to end up getting used for recruitment?
I mean, in terms of predictions, Alan, something we're looking at a tool that allows greater engagement with the user base, so they can give feedback based on gamification. So the super users suggest their idea, people vote on these ideas, and then the users simply select the ideas they'd like the most of. So we're trying to, it's called user voice, and you can see it around plugged into a lot of different online software tools. But I think what would be useful is to try and get more scientific feedback from the user base rather than the loudest shouting decision maker or the largest client on what actually they want to see in their software and how they're using that technology. That will help us make better decisions moving forward with planning and what comes first and what comes next. Based on a sort of more engaged democratic feedback from consultants themselves. But I think on the other hand, technologists do need to be brave and try and offer the tools. So we were talking about analysing all of this, all of the data you have to provide. But of course, any business can pay a recruitment software provider to make reports, to customize reports, but really we need to be offering the right reports there for them. They don't want to mess around with creating the reports or paying extra for them or so forth. They just need to be, the right ones need to be there. But of course, there's many different agencies and many different demands. But I think it's hard work really for Shane and I to sort of predict exactly what they want. Be clever and still make money and get paid. So
you still, Louis and Mark, Shane, you guys still offer reports like the old style reports, like call reports, and number of candidates called in an hour, or number of emails sent to a candidate. I mean, a lot of agencies would still manage their business on those kinds of measures. So those are the reports that you're seeing being used the most, and that's open to the three of you.
Yeah, Alan, absolutely. I mean, we offer lots and lots of different reports. The difficulty with reporting is that what we get asked for and what people find useful tend to be two different things, because people start off saying, well, tell me what's happened, and then you tell them what's happened, and then you say, well, tell me what hasn't happened that we need to do, and that's a much more useful question to ask. And then you get into ratio analysis and all the rest of it. So again, it's a frustrating problem that the technologists have, and it's the Henry Ford thing. If I asked my customers what they wanted, they'd ask for a faster horse. And the difficulty is who's leading this. It's the responsibility of the recruiters to develop better ways of recruiting, and it's the responsibility of the technologists to facilitate it. But it's anybody's guess who gets there first.
Well, I think that's going to be nice, Lee, and Mark thinks that we should all put our heads on the block and make a prediction for 2015, technology or otherwise. Shane, we'll let you do the last one now that you've said we need to get a better horse. Mark, as long as you decided to put us on the spot, what's your prediction for 2015? And you're going to have to come off mute, Mark. We're not going to hear that prediction otherwise.
Sorry. Louis reminded me to put it on mute because of some interference that comes through from my microphone. I've got three areas that I think we're going to see increased activity for. I think gamification is going to come into play as part of the cultural assessment and assessing people operating in their real environment. Seeing quite a lot more activity going on in that sort of space, but no one's really sort of created a mainstream tool for people to access and use in that area yet. I think that more access to market intelligence, the big data stuff, where people can sort of make intelligent decisions and predictions based on sort of, what's happening around them. I think that will come into play both for the recruiter and the end client. And I think just more centralization of services. We see this with CRMs now sort of having more facilities, more third-party services integrated into them. And that's happening with the ATS environment and purpose-built recruitment platforms as well. So I think that's what the users want. They want simplicity. They want to be able to operate from one dashboard. But one final thing, I think what recruiters really want and what recruitment businesses really want us to provide to recruiters in the technology space are solutions that happen at the click of a button, so that recruiters can carry on recruiting and not going out being creative, using tools that end up distracting them from what is mainstream recruitment.
All right, thank you, Mark. Louis?
Mark just covered it all, so.
Gosh.
I tell you what, I'll plug this. This is the white paper Bill's done for us, and we work with Bill Boardman on recruitment technology, and our predictions are in here. So do come and download it. But really, I think the key was what Mark said was using data, retrieving data, analysing data better to make intelligent market decisions, and linking up your structured data in your database automatically. As automatically as possible with the online data, which is happening now in all the other markets. Being able to locate social profiles based on just having one piece of data, for instance, and there's not that need to store everything. Just store the location and be able to retrieve that information. I did have something else, but it's gone now, so I'll pass over to Shane. But you can come and get Data Reality, what big data really means to recruiters.
Well, and I'm going to just say that it's not big data, despite what you and Bill have put together. It's small data that matters. It's not.
It is, yeah.
It's the small data that matters. Do I have a prediction for the future in 2015? Yeah, it's very depressing. It's going to be same old for most everyday recruiters. They're going to keep doing what they've always done. They're going to ignore Einstein's principle, and they're just going to keep doing it the same old way they have because they're under so much pressure. And with a lack of resources, there's not enough bodies in their business to actually do recruiting the way they would like to do it. Shane?
Well, yeah, I'm going to say there's good. There's good news and bad news on the horizon. The bad news is that I think death will come to some recruiters who do not adapt to the new environment with which we find ourselves from a social and environmental, business and technology space. They will go the way of the estate agents. The good news, however, is that I think as a result of all our technological efforts, we will make recruitment more difficult, thus securing the industry for a long time to come. You know, in spite of ourselves, I think that's what we've seen in the past, and long may it continue. I'll finish then. If Louis and others could tweet this sentiment, it's about big data, that recruiters really don't need to focus on data, they need to focus on using intelligence.
Nice company plug. Well done, Shane. Well, I'd like to thank Shane, Louis, Mark, who's had to dash to go make a sale, Louise, who's sitting on the beach, for making this another riveting Rec Hangout. It will be always up as on the normal channels. Louise's blog will come out shortly, and then Louis and I will republish it. Louis, what are we doing in 2 weeks' time?
Sorry, I was just tweeting what Shane said.
You were thinking,
are we nice to one another?
Yeah.
Great. Right. What are we doing? 2 weeks' time, we are talking. I forget the exact topic. We're talking about whether recruitment agencies need to be digital marketing agencies, or whether recruiters need to be digital marketeers. And this is a sort of an association with the marketing awards, the MARAs. And we're supporting that event, and we're going to invite some of the nominees at that event along to the show, and I haven't sent that invite out yet, but we're hoping to get some of the best sort of specialist marketing recruiters onto the show to share their thoughts. So we'll be hearing from recruiters themselves rather than technologists or gurus or experts. So that'll be an interesting one, and we'll be releasing a Rec Hangout white paper afterwards associated with this, which will make them right. So we'll share.
So we'll see it sometime in 2015 then.
Yeah. So we'll share that around. Just sign up to the Rec Hangout, or go on, keep an eye on the website for any updates on that. But we should have something up next week.
All right, brilliant. And just a final shout out of thanks to the people who actually participated from outside the building today, like Brenda, Toby, Kim. And again, apologies, Kim, for getting your sexual inclinations wrong. But happy to know that you are participating. Great questions. Appreciate the input that you've had. And see you guys all in 2 weeks' time.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Shane. Good hangout.
Thank you.
Take care.
Pleasure.
Bye.